Welcome to our first podcast. I am Shauna Doby, and I'm the editor of Canada's local gardener magazine, and my mother, Dorothy.
Yeah, hi, that's me. I'm Dorothy Doby, and I've been in this gardening business for about 23 years in the publishing end of it, and doing, radio and things like that for the past, 18 years, 18 years, I think about.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And we're starting today where plants start, which is with seeds. And to help us do that, we've invited John Barrett of Veseys Seeds. Hello, John.
Hi there. Hi.
Now, before we get into it, I wanted to mention that John and Dorothy have a relationship that goes back quite a few years to the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra.
Yeah, that would be early 80s, I would say, when we lived in Winnipeg, and I was director of operations of the Winnipeg Symphony at that time. So
you were just a kid, as I remember, John. You were, really good-looking kid.
I was fairly young, yeah, that's for sure, because I'm still, quite young now. So.
Oh, yeah, you are. I can tell.
I was younger than the both of you.
Yeah, that's true. Our only child, our son, was born in Winnipeg, so it always holds a special warm spot for us, so that's nice.
I like that.
Yeah. That's good for him. And was it while you were in Winnipeg that you started growing sunflowers?
No, it was when we moved to Prince Edward Island, I guess, in 84 or 85, because of seeing so many sunflowers in Manitoba. I thought, kind of as a hobby, I thought I'd grow 2 acres one year. And that was quite a challenge. Anyway, it eventually turned into a bit of a hobby business and then a more serious business. And we had a whole line of products that related to sunflowers and bird feeding and bees and honey and tea. And it kind of got a little crazy. So
sunflower tea?
It was a hobby that kind of got out of control, but the roots of it, I guess, came from seeing so many sunflowers growing in Manitoba. So
can you make tea from sunflowers?
Well, yeah, we were incorporating the yellow petals from the sunflowers in with the tea, so it was kind of interesting. And
what does that taste like?
It was pretty good. We were working with a tea blending company in Sri Lanka, and we had quite a number of varieties of teas, including one with sunflowers. So it was kind of fun.
Wow. I've had tea with strawberry and I've had tea with peach, but I've never had tea with sunflower. That is brilliant. People will have to try that.
Yeah, no, we had quite a range of products, sunflower oil for cooking and seeds, of course, for human consumption, as well as for bird feed and all types of things. So it was kind of fun. Yeah.
You live a lot of lives. So fast forward to now, and that's where we are beginning today. Our big question right now, you work for Veseys Seeds on PEI, and what the heck happened last year with seeds and gardeners and all that stuff?
Well, everything was going along as normal. We always experience maybe a 3, 5, in a really good year, 7% increase in sales, and everything was going along as planned until about the 12th of March. And then all of a sudden, instead of getting, 1,000 orders in a day, we got 3,200 orders. And we thought, well, this is strange. There must have been a problem with the website. I don't understand how could we get so many orders in one day? And then the next day it was the same, and the next day it was the same.
Did that start right away, John, or did it sort of build? Really?
Boom.
On the 12th, was that the day that they shut down everything? Yeah.
I was in Ottawa.
It was the day of my last flight, actually. And
mine too.
Yeah, and it was so bizarre. And then we were running at some point in time for about 14 weeks, we were running at about 344% of normal.
Wow.
And it was just quite overwhelming. We had to add staff, double shift, go to 6 days a week in order to keep up. In fact, at one point, we had to shut down the internet for probably a 2.5 to 3 week period because, there was no point in taking all these orders. I think at one point in time, we were 35,000 orders behind. And so we knew, well, there's no point in adding another 20 or 30,000 orders. Otherwise, we're not going to get them out until the summer. So we did that for a while. And of course, the day we turned it back on, everybody was kind of waiting and, it all happened again. So we sort of thought, this was going to be a bit of a seed explosion, and that would taper off. And our spring bulb catalog, we thought probably wouldn't be affected because it was more flowers, more of a frill item really than a food or an essential. But the same thing happened with our spring bulb program. And then our fall bulb catalog came out in May. And we ended that season last October, probably close to double what would be normal.
So was it vegetables in the seeds, or was it flowers that people were, or was it a mix?
Oh, within the seed catalog, it would have been more it's always more vegetables than flowers anyway. And that trend continued. In fact, it might have been even a little more on the vegetable side than flowers during the massive increase.
Mm-hmm. What about this year? Has that continued in that way, or is it?
Well, it never died down, and that was the strange thing. We kind of thought, well, this will be a one-time thing. Well, when we were estimating what would happen this year, we figured we probably wouldn't be back to 2019 levels, but we could never expect 2020 levels. So we kind of geared up based on it would be somewhere in between what 2019 was and what 2020 was.
And what happened?
We were soon proven wrong there because I just looked at a report before we chatted, and we've been running at 284% above normal since the start of our fiscal year, which is December 1st.
Wow. Yeah. And in the meantime, do you have to have physical distancing and PEI at your plant?
Well, we do. We try to follow. We don't have to wear masks. Our 140 staff are considered a bubble, and so no one's wearing masks other than in our retail store. But we are trying to be distanced when we're having meetings or on production lines, that sort of thing. But some of our restrictions aren't as severe as they are perhaps in Ontario and Alberta. So that helps. And we've never missed a day. We're considered an essential business. So we've never been closed. So
that's astounding to think of a bubble of, what was it, 140 people?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a bubble of 2. My husband
I have a bubble of 1.
Well, we've been very fortunate in Prince Edward Island. I think in total we've had maybe 111 cases. No one has been hospitalized. And no one has died.
That's great.
And every single case that we've had has been travel related. So it's been caught through testing as soon as those people have returned, and they've gone immediately, because we still have a 14-day isolation policy. So if you're coming even from Nova Scotia, you would have to self-isolate for 14 days. So even the handful of cases that we've had have all been confined to the residence of those people. And in every case, people had quite mild symptoms. So we've been very fortunate. It's the joys of living on an island and also having a chief public health office that is really doing a fantastic job.
You mentioned earlier when we were talking before we started that you normally travel about 125 times a year.
Yeah. That's
which is extraordinary. That leads into one of the questions I had is, where do you get your seeds for Veseys? Is that part of the exercise?
It is. It's not so much a big component of my travel. My travel is maybe more associated with the hard goods items that we sell, as well as the bulbs that we sell. I'm in close contact with our growers and packaging and exporter people in Europe when it comes to spring bulbs, fall bulbs, perennials, as well as all of our 600 vendors that we have for hard goods. Other people are kind of dealing with the seed, but yeah, most of my travel is related around looking at what's new and seeing how things are coming and checking with current suppliers, looking for new suppliers, forging new partnerships. Yeah.
So where do you get your seeds? All around the world, or do you grow some yourself?
I would say that our seeds, I think, come from probably as many as 27 different countries. Of all of the seed varieties that we sell, only one variety is actually grown in Prince Edward Island, and that's the York turnip.
Really?
And it was developed here by the experimental farm many, many years ago, and continues to be grown under contract just for us. But certain
no potatoes.
What's that?
No potatoes.
Oh, well, yes. Actually, our seed potatoes are all grown here, all of the varieties. But with regular seed, it's coming from various places. Some of them are Southern Hemisphere because the climates are opposite. That gives good inventory for people like us at a time of year that you wouldn't normally need seed. And these are all coming from seed growing farms. So, for instance, like the people we would buy our lupin seed from, that would be the only thing that they grow. So it's not, you don't run the risk of it cross-pollinating with something else. So they're all very specific, tightly controlled seed farm operations.
Fascinating.
Bulbs now, a bulk of the bulbs, of course, come from Holland, but more and more that's been spread out. We're buying daffodils grown in Scotland, tulips grown in France, amaryllis even in Brazil, but still the majority would be grown in Holland.
Right. That's really cool. I often say about my garden, and when we're talking about the whole question of diversity in Canada right now, all of our plants come from all over the world, and they seem to get along just fine in the garden.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes we get requests from people to provide some native species seed. And when you look at what truly is native species to North America, it's a very, very small list. And most of them are herbs that don't even flower. So practically everything has come from somewhere.
Right.
Here. There's a lot of confusion by people who are wanting to do the right thing. They confuse native with invasive.
Yes.
And they think if it's not native, that it's going to take over their yard or their neighborhood, which is, of course, completely wrong. So yeah, it's a strange one. We struggle with it all the time, trying to explain that to people, but.
So what are some of the trends you see right now in what people are buying? Is there any particular direction they're going in currently?
We haven't really seen a shift, even though the business has exploded. It's sort of exploded proportionately along the normal lines. Tomato seeds are always going to be probably your big one, and in flowers, sunflowers is always going to be a big one. Onion sets, garlic, seed potatoes, they're large items for us. And but we haven't seen like something coming right out of the blue and taking off as a result of all of this COVID explosion of orders. It's just more of basically the same. Now, what has changed, though, which is really interesting and really excites us. In fact, I was just looking at a Google Analytics report before we got together today. And normally for us, our single biggest demographic would be probably the 55 to 64-year-old age, followed closely by the 45 to 55-year-old. Well, we saw a spike last spring where our top demographic through our Google Analytics was the 25 to 34-year-old. And lately, that has maintained itself as currently our top demographic. So that's wonderful because these people are gardening for the very first time. And we're, trying to help them, and we're hoping for their success. I've been reading some surveys of last year's first-time gardeners, particularly in that younger demographic. And apparently somewhere in the range of 83% of them were very successful and were excited about doing it again. So it looks like it's been more than just a one-time, well, we can't go on vacation, we'll try and grow some vegetables, and the weeds get ahead of them, and they don't realize that it's more work than it really is. But no, people seem to have really liked it. And I think what's happening is with these younger families that their children are getting involved, and they're seeing that it's a really great family activity. And then at the end of the day, they get to eat something that they grew. So there's a lot of satisfaction there. So it's nice to see that age group coming back because
we see it in the magazine too.
Because my age group, Generation X, did not. We didn't garden.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. If you ask a typical 30-year-old, where does a tomato come from? They say it comes from Loblaws. They have no idea. Is it in an egg or I don't know, but yeah. So this is really exciting for us because I don't think we're ever going to go back to 2019 levels of business. I think we've reached a new plateau, which can only grow and grow and grow because we're seeing that these younger people, well, it's the old, I told two friends and they told two friends, and everybody's jumping on the bandwagon because they're seeing, well, gosh, my neighbor is doing that. They look like they're having fun. And I think maybe I'll try that, so.
That's
all
awesome.
Good.
I would like us to take a little break for a couple of minutes so we can hear from the folks at headquarters, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Make the most out of your gardening endeavors this year by subscribing to Canada's Local Gardener magazine. 4 seasonal issues, thousands of tips and ideas in each colorful edition. Go to localgardener.net and order yours today.
Okay, and we're back. Let me ask you, John, about the viability of seeds, because I know it's something you have concerns about with, and people on Facebook will reproduce lists of this seed is good for 3 years and this seed is good for 6 years. And tell me something about your concerns about that.
One of the biggest concerns that we have when it comes to people who like to either save seeds that were produced in their garden or only planted a half of a package of seeds that they bought from us or from somewhere else and decide, I'll use those next year. While stored properly, most of those seeds probably will be okay next year. The problem is the storing them properly. Most of our seeds that are delicate and are subject to losing their germination rate, they're all stored in a very interesting combination of humidity and temperature. And it kind of has to add up to 100. So our storage room could be 40 degrees Fahrenheit with 60 degree humidity, or 60 degrees Fahrenheit with 40 degree humidity. Any combination keeps those seeds as current and maintains their germination rate as best as possible. Most people at home don't have the capability to store whatever leftover seeds they have so you put them in a drawer, and the drawer is next to a radiator, and it gets hot and then it gets cold, and it gets hot or it's damp or, and then next year they go to use the seeds and, the seeds weren't any good. Then they blame the name of the company that's on the seed package when in fact they probably shouldn't have tried to hang on to them, especially when seeds
or at least expect a very low germination rate.
Exactly. They found sunflower seeds in Navajo caves in Nevada and carbon dated the things at 150 years of age and germinated them and grew sunflowers. Whereas, some other things, the germ rate can fall off very quickly, no matter how well you take care of it. Something we do is we package to what's called Canada #1 standard. That's not imposed on us by government or any type of regulation. It's just a self-imposed standard. And depending upon the seed variety, that Canada #1 standard generally relates to the germination rate. And I don't know if there's any that would be lower than 85%. So that's why we run a full seed lab with full staff. We're testing every lot of every seed. Any seed that we're carrying over for another year is all tested. And if it doesn't meet the Canada #1 standard, we will not send it to anybody. Well, that's not true. We won't send it to any customers. A lot of that seed that maybe doesn't quite make the Canada #1 standard usually gets sent to projects that we're involved with in third world countries, whether it's Congo or Venezuela or wherever, so that the seed's not thrown out, but it's going to use, and it's people are growing food with it. So,
say I had leftover seeds and I was going to try them. People have recommended putting the seeds into a jar and putting them in the freezer.
I don't know that I would freeze them. I mean, that could work that could very well work for some, and it could very well kill others. And I wouldn't be able to tell you which ones, without checking with our seed department, that would work for or not work for. The main thing is that they're just kept at a moderate temperature and dry. That's your best bet. Keep them dry and don't expose them to extremes of heat or cold. And that would be your best success. Of course, we suggest you buy new seed every year.
Well, you like to try, but we wanted to ask you a little bit about a seed that we have trouble not see. I don't even want to try it from seed in Manitoba. Sweet potatoes, and Shauna and I were talking about that earlier.
Well, you don't start them from seed.
No, we've been working with slips,
right?
Yeah,
and you guys did have them for a while.
We did, actually, up until only about a year ago. And we were literally selling tens of thousands, maybe even more than tens of thousands. And the people who grew them, and of course we test everything here in our trial gardens, seem to be quite happy. Very, very, very few customer issues. The problem with them, one, it was just our maybe inability to cope with such a volume of these things. When they arrive, you need to ship them out in 2 days.
Ooh.
So to ship out this vast volume of sweet potato slips, I think we were selling them in groups of 10 or 12, is a massive amount of work. So everything has to grind to a halt while we process all these sweet potato orders and get them out the door. It's also expensive because you want to send them by express post rather than regular mail, because you don't want them to dry out. They're all wrapped in damp paper toweling and everything. And you want to get them to the customer as soon as possible. In many places, it might not yet be a suitable time of year to plant them. And so how does the customer hang on to them? So we decided, at least for the time being, that we would discontinue these sweet potato cuttings. And they may return at some point down the road, but it was more of an inconvenience, I guess. But they did work well. Really
Kevin
well.
Toomey gave me some from TNT Seeds last year, and I put them in my pots, and they got nice and leafy. And over the summer, then we had a fairly early frost in September. So I thought, well, I better dig these things up, and they were like the size of my finger.
Oh, wow.
So I don't think I had enough time.
We've had in our field trials here, we've had them, and I mean they're massive. Like they'd be 12 inches long.
Really?
4 inches across, just massive, bigger than what you would see in the grocery store. Yeah, no, they did really well.
Well,
Jonna's got one growing on her windowsill.
Yeah, now I'm going to plant it just to see what happens. Or
Yeah,
plant
it's good
the
to get
slips.
it rooted. It's nice to get it rooted inside first, so that when it does go outside, it's got a bit of a root mass, and boom, it takes off when it hits the ground.
But I'm not sure what kind these are, and they're probably something. It's probably from South America.
It happened accidentally, didn't it?
It happened accidentally. It's one from the grocery store. And I don't know if we're going to have a long enough growing season to get much out of them.
You should, because it started early.
I would think that you would, knowing what our experience here in PEI is. And, we can have frost as early as September the 11th in PEI. I think if your slip is well rooted, it should be okay. Yeah.
Well, I'll give it a try, but I'm not expecting much, let's just say.
Well, at least you got it started. I tried and nothing happened. It just shriveled up and died. That's
because you don't have rooting produce in your cupboard the way I do. So shall we go to another break?
Yes.
Okay, let's.
Keep up to date with all the latest gardening news and information by following Canada's Local Gardener magazine on Facebook and Instagram.
And we're back. And Dorothy, you have a question for John.
John, I was reading today that people are planting radishes as a cover crop to aerate the soil because of new agricultural practices. And as a longtime sunflower seed grower, you'll have some knowledge about how you deal with these new approaches to agriculture where they're drilling, not tilling, and then they get compaction. What do you think about that? I
haven't heard about the use of radish, although that does sound interesting indeed. When growing sunflowers, of course, you can't grow in the same place. You need to rest for either 2 or ideally 3 years between crops. But I have seen, particularly here where we have so many potato growers who are forced to rotate with clover one year and grain another year, there's been a fair bit more of this no-till farming going on, which I guess it has its pros and cons. In one sense, it's great for erosion in that you're not disrupting everything. You're not having topsoil blowing away, but at the same time, you are getting that compaction, which is going to make it that much harder when you try to drop a seed in the ground.
Yeah.
Seeds are pretty tiny, and if they're in there in that compact soil, especially if it's a clay-based soil, it's going to have a hard time to push up. So, but I hadn't heard about the radish. That's interesting. It would be an inexpensive way to do it, I guess.
Well, I guess you eat the crop as well. I guess wouldn't you be able to, or maybe they have to? Do you have to harvest them earlier?
Well, they're such a short crop to harvest.
Yeah.
I would think if you were trying to leave it in as a cover crop, they would be all gone, quite woody by the time that you would want to dig them up, because, a good radish grower, even in a climate where we are, should be able to get 2-3 crops of radish a year because they're so fast to grow. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to leave it there, we use a number of green type cover crops in our own field trials. And then when it comes time to rotate, we just plow it under and add that organic matter to the soil. So. Mm-hmm.
Shauna has me writing a story about what to plant in your vegetable garden, what kind of flowers to plant in your vegetable garden. What do you suggest?
Well, I might not be the best person to ask. There are, and I think there's probably some information on our website about companion planting. I know marigolds, for instance, are always something that people use to keep certain pests away from their vegetables. But we encourage companion planting because it cuts down maybe on whatever type of pesticide you might need to use. Plus, we end up selling you flower seeds as well as vegetable seeds, which is always a bonus. But I'd have to think there probably is that sort of information is readily available online, whether it's our site or others. But we do encourage it, and it actually makes a vegetable garden look quite nice too. And not just around the border, but quite often people will run rows of certain flowers in between 2 crops, either to avoid cross-pollination or to distract certain aphids or pests away from the vegetable. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. When I started the magazine some 20 years ago, it seems to me that most people started a garden with plants. You went to the nursery and you bought a bunch of plants, plugs. And now, for one thing, there aren't very many garden centers, not in Ontario at any rate that I'm finding. There aren't the same number as there were back then. And the ones that were there have closed. And I bet they're kicking themselves now that gardening has taken off again. Yeah. Have you noticed more people starting from seeds?
Well, on the flower side of things, I think, not counting this past 12 months, we've seen a steady decline actually in flower seeds. Mm-hmm. While maybe our parents would take the time and the effort in the basement to start their geraniums and their petunias in February and, bring them along and then put them out on the deck for a while and bring them back in and eventually plant them in the window boxes. Now, you go to the big box store and there's 6 or 12 geraniums in a box for, next to nothing in price. So you just take them home, you stick them in the window box, instant gratification. Yeah. So we've seen that affecting our flower seed sales. Vegetable wise, though, and we do sell some cutting plants, to get people started with tomatoes and peppers and things. Mm-hmm. But we have seen over the last 5 or 6 years an increase in demand for vegetable seed. Whether these people were using starter plants or plugs before, I'm not sure. But I think more and more people are eager to know where everything came from. Mm-hmm. So if I'm going to buy a tomato plant that's already 10 inches tall and I'm going to stick it in the ground, I don't know who's been spraying what on that plant, how it's been forced, how vital it is. Whereas if I have a seed, particularly if I'm, organically inclined and I want an organic seed, I know exactly right from the start that, okay, I've started with this seed. I've only put manure. I've not sprayed it with anything. So that whole food security thing is becoming more and more important to more and more people. So in that regard, I think that we're probably seeing a boost in vegetable seed as opposed to buying plants or things started.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that when you travel all over the world, you're looking for the hard products that you sell in your catalog. What are some of those? What's happening there?
That's quite a variety. That's expanded a great deal, I guess, during my time here, in that we probably offer now in excess of 800 or 900 different items. So that would go from anything from a $1,000 indoor 4-foot wide LED light garden so that you could, get early starts or grow African violets or grow whatever is legal to grow inside, right down to a soil thermometer or a little hand seeder for $2.95. So it runs the full gamut of gardening accessories, hard goods, plant supports, plant trays, some things a little kitchen related, a little bit of garden decor, light gardens, even greenhouses. We're selling large greenhouses now as well. So yeah, it's a catalog all onto itself. Wow.
Did you have something to say?
Well, I was going to ask about lighting for you mentioned the LED lights for starting. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, when we first got into the whole light gardening side of the business, everything was fluorescent. T5s were kind of, actually, it started with T12s. Fluorescent light tubes are measured in a very interesting way. They're measured in 1/12 of an inch. So the standard fluorescent tube that would be in most buildings 10 years ago, they were all T12s. That meant that the tube was 1 inch in diameter. And then technology was able to bring them down in size so that kind of the T5 now, which is just less than 1/2 inch in diameter, became the standard. Full spectrum fluorescent lights became available. They were very, very, very expensive. And then all of a sudden, the whole LED development just blew the whole thing wide open. So now everything is LED. So it uses less energy. It's better light. It's a better color spectrum for growing. They take up far less room. You practically never have to replace them. So almost every single light growing mechanism that we sell now is full LED.
Wow. Mr. Tomato, I don't know if you know about Brian Gorey, but he's the one who introduced Cozy Coast to the market years and years ago. And he grows under light. And he builds a light table. He shows you how to build it right down to the last screw. I'm wondering if he's using LED lights. I'll have to put a bug in his ear and say, don't give us any of those fluorescent things.
I would have to think so. Just from the energy saving alone, the LED has just changed that whole thing completely. So
yeah, I just went because I'm starting seeds for the first time this year. Well, the second time. The first time they all experienced damping off, and that was about 20 years ago. So I went and bought a light, and it's this weird thing with all these prongs coming off of it, and it's all LEDs. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I didn't pay much, so I'm not sure if it's.
But that's an interesting point. Are they more expensive or less than the old lights?
Well, when they first came out, they were more expensive, and they're probably slightly more expensive now. But as fewer people are looking for for fluorescents are probably going to go up in price because the demand is not there anymore. But yeah, they're quite affordable now. Mm-hmm. There's a great company that we deal with, and we're selling not only fixtures but just bulbs by themselves, replacement bulbs, and there's been a lot of science go into the LEDs that are specifically for growing plants.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. Let me ask you, when I placed my Veseys order back in January, I noticed that there were all kinds of seed variations that you could get. There were pelleted seeds versus non-pelleted. What's the difference?
Well, pelleting a seed means putting a coating on it. Mm-hmm. And there's not just one coating. So it would depend on what you wanted the coating to do. For some seed, the coating might be a protection against cold, damp ground. So you want to get the seed in the ground early, but you don't want the seed to rot. So it might have a coating that protects against the moisture. There are other coatings that might protect the seed against certain weeds or certain pests.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm.
Then there are also coatings that are placed on seeds simply so that the seed is easier to handle, because some seeds are very, very, very tiny. Mm-hmm. And if you're growing a large quantity of something and you're using some type of an automated planting device, the pelleted seed is going to operate in a more consistent manner, so that it's, if you've got a mechanized, even a hand-pushed seeder, you want each of those seeds to drop in exactly the same place. Well, when they're pelleted, they're round, they roll, and they'll go through your machinery quite easily. So, so there's a variety of coatings that can be used on seed. Yeah.
Well, I did get the pelleted carrot seeds.
Well, and they become much bigger, of course, because carrot seed is so tiny.
Yeah.
And then when it's pelleted, it just adds that much more substance to it, So because there's always way more carrot seeds than anybody ever needs in a packaged seed.
Right. And some seeds are organic. You list them as. Now, what's the difference there?
If you're an organic grower, a certified organic grower, in order to maintain your certification as a certified organic grower, you have to, if at all possible, you have to plant organic seed. Mm-hmm. So that means that seed came from a plant that was grown organically, and has to come from a certified, organically grown operation. That way, you're starting out with something that has never been subjected to chemical, herbicide, pesticide, whatever. I'd have to question as to how much of any of that a very tiny seed could carry forward. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's for some people, it's just, even a home gardener, they just feel better about planting organic seed. Mm-hmm. For a certified organic grower, they have no choice unless a seed is not available in organic quantity, in the quantity that you need. You can. You get a letter from the seed company saying, sorry, we are unable to supply this in organic. They're using a more traditional seed, and then it's okay for them to do that. So it's just basically how that seed was grown, as opposed to not really knowing how that seed was grown. And our organic seed sales have been climbing every year, just as the demand for organic produce in the grocery store climbs every year. Mm-hmm. It's more expensive. The seed growing market has been slow to gear up and respond, so it's always in somewhat of a short supply. All varieties are not available as organic. Some of them, it might just be almost impossible to produce organically, or the yield when growing organically could be so much lower that that's another contributing factor as to why that seed costs so much more than a traditional seed. So,
do they pellet organic seeds?
That's a good question. Some of the pelleting processes I'm not sure if any of the pelleting processes pass the organic regulations. They may, certainly not the ones that have, built-in herbicide or fungicide, but some others that might be more of like a moisture protection could very well be.
What's the biggest mistake young gardeners make when they're starting out with seeds?
I would think maybe, and I've seen this with my own son, I'm going to put in a garden that's going to be 100 feet long and it's going to be 30 feet wide. And I'm thinking, okay, have you ever weeded a garden that's, and so you get all excited and you rent a rototiller and you do all of this sort of stuff and you've got, a small market garden on your hands. And as soon as it rains a couple of times and the sun comes out, now you've got a weeding situation ahead of you that, the first couple of times it's a great novelty and, oh, look how nice it looks. And then you go away for a vacation for a week and a half and you come back and you can't tell what's the vegetables and what's the weeds. So I think starting small is probably start small, have great success, be able to stay on top of it, even if it's just like a 8 or 12 feet by 5 foot wide raised bed, but do a really good job small, see what you like to grow, what did well, and then expand from there, but don't go crazy right off the start because you'll probably get so discouraged that you say, the heck with it, I'm not going to grow anything anymore. But I think if you start small, you'll get a lot of reward from it, and you will want to expand gradually.
Mm-hmm. Wow. We're going to take one more break.
Okay.
Subscribe to the 10 Neat Things e-newsletter for a free weekly roundup of fascinating gardening facts. Go to localgardener.net to find out more.
And we're back. John, tell me, when I was compiling the catalog of seed catalogs, I noticed that just about everybody on their website said that we have taken the Safe Seed Pledge, and they list it on the website and they tell you what it is. And I think that everybody has taken it. So I wonder, what is it and does it matter?
Oh, I think it matters. Like we talked about before with the people confusing native plants with invasive plants, there's a great discussion that never ends about genetically modified seeds, GMOs. There are a lot of people who are, scared to death about genetically modified seed, and in some cases, probably rightly so. So the Safe Seed Pledge is a pledge that a company like ours would make that says that we do not knowingly offer for sale or provide to our customers any genetically modified seed. Mm-hmm. It's not quite as clear as everybody would like it to be. We cannot say we guarantee 100% that none of our seed is genetically, because what happens is seed that's growing in seed farms can cross-pollinate with a neighbor 2 miles down the road who's growing some sort of genetically modified something. But we make we buy no genetically modified seed, and we make every effort to ensure that none of our seed has been, for the lack of a better word, infected by or cross-pollinated by genetically modified. So all of these companies are responding to the home gardeners' concerns about GMOs, and that's the best possible answer that we can give, is to say that we live by the Safe Seed Pledge.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure there are any companies that haven't taken the pledge.
Probably not from a home gardening standpoint.
I see.
Companies that are maybe a little more, we have a commercial division within our company, but the home gardener component is our largest component. Other companies that are maybe primarily commercial and less home gardener would probably be toying in the genetically modified area, because a lot of commercial growers, for a variety of reasons, need to or want to grow genetically modified crops just because of yield or resistance to pests or fungicide. So that's why I think you'd see probably most home gardener catalog companies would have signed on to the Safe Seed Pledge.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of instructions on seed packages that people don't understand, and certifications and so on. Can you explain some of that?
Well, on any organic seed package that we would sell, we probably make reference to the fact that we are certified.
Right.
You can't just put seeds in a package and tell people are organic. Well, you can until you're caught, I guess.
Yeah.
But we're subject to rigorous inspection frequently, and at times without notice. Our entire seed packaging facility is divided into two separate areas. The traditional seed and the organic seed are not allowed to, and this is their term, co-mingle. So if I was sending you 10 packages of traditional seed and 5 packages of organic seed, your organic seed would have been packaged in a separate facility.
Oh.
Those packages would have been placed in some sort of a bag and sealed before they went in the box with your traditional seed. So those packages are not even touching each other. Mm-hmm. It's a little over the top, but
it's kind of like peanut allergies.
That's what's required in order for us to be considered fully certified. And so we abide by those rules.
Okay.
What about can people save seeds? I mean, I know that greenhouse growers get into a lot of trouble if they save seeds from certain plants and try to regrow them themselves.
Yeah, there's a few things there because some seeds and some varieties have been developed, and the person that developed that variety has a patent.
Right.
And, based on that patent, their future depends on selling more seed of the variety they developed. So for people to save that seed, no one's probably going to sue a home gardener, but technically they would be breaking the law by saving the seed and replanting it. A lot of hybrid seeds are not going to do anything for you next year. You can save them all you want, but because they're a certain type of hybrid, they're sterile. And so they're not going to do anything for you next year. Mm-hmm. So that's why, where possible, it's just buy what you need for now and buy fresh seed every year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some are also won't come back true to the parent too, won't they?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Depending on how they're bred and how they're grown, you're not necessarily going to have what you think you're going to have.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Just the final thing I want to ask you about. Do you have anything coming down the pike that you can tell us about? Anything new or exciting?
Well, our fall bulb catalog goes to press next week.
Wow.
Yeah, because the first mailing of that catalog is in early May, but we also like to have them on hand to go in outgoing spring bulb orders, and we start shipping spring bulbs in April. So that catalog typically will always have 60 to 90 new varieties. And that's always very exciting for us and very exciting for our customers. There are some really interesting and unique, well, there always are, but there's some really interesting and unique new tulips and daffodils and scary hyacinths, all of those sorts of things coming in the next catalog. It's interesting. I could be visiting a daffodil grower in Northern Holland, and he'll show me 6 daffodils that he has that are all the same, but they're very unique. Mm-hmm. And 95% of the time, something has happened in nature that something cross-pollinated or a disease created something to do something. So now he has 6. And I'm saying, wow, I could probably sell about 15,000 of those. And he'll say, okay, he'll write that down. I'll make a commitment. But because those 6 are next year only going to be maybe 18, and the following year, 72, you're maybe committing to an exclusivity and a product that you're not going to see for 12 years.
Wow.
15 years.
And do you have some of those coming out this year?
Oh, every year.
Yeah.
Every year. So we're committing to things that we're seeing that are unique or different, but know that they're not even going to have market quantities available for many years down the road. That's kind of the exciting part about the whole bulb business.
Mm-hmm. And not just bulbs, but can you tell me what happened to the color orange? Wasn't there a big issue about the beautiful, brilliant orange petunias that came out a few years ago? They no longer sell.
I'm not really sure. I'm not familiar with that. I don't know about that one.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll leave that question for another time.
That would be more of a,
Yeah.
a nursery question. And what's coming up for summer?
Well, we'll be shipping spring bulbs probably April, May, and June. And before you know it, fall bulbs and fall perennials start arriving to us in August. And because there's usually some production that has to be done there, whether it's packaging or prep work. And then we start shipping the fall bulb product in early September. So there's never really any kind of a lull for us. And currently, despite all the craziness that's going on with our, call center and our website, we're also in the midst of some pretty major expansion and renovations just to deal with the sheer volume. Like this spring, we will ship double the orders we shipped last spring just in the spring bulb catalog.
FedEx must love you.
Wow.
So we're just in the final stages of adding a massive mezzanine floor to a 20,000 foot production facility that we use for bulbs. We're buying new greenhouses. We're doing all kinds of things in various buildings just to try and be able to accommodate the volume of business. We're quite confident that if we do things properly, that we'll be able to hang on to this business and that it's not just like a one-shot sort of thing. So we're rapidly building for the future, even though we're 82 years old. We've never seen anything quite like this. So,
but that's so exciting. It's exciting for us too in the business of magazines and the whole gardening thing. And people are so grateful right now to receive the magazine. It's very heartwarming.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's, in fact, yesterday I just wrote a purchase order with our printer to go back on press with our seed catalog. We've had, I think since January the 1st, over 58,000 requests for our seed catalog, which is, of course, more than normal. And so having to go back on press to do reprints of, major 170-page catalogs it's not cheap, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we can put a catalog in the hands of people that ask for one.
Mm-hmm.
One of my garden colleagues out here told me that he ordered from our magazine a package of tomato seeds from every single catalog that was listed. I think we had 28 of them listed.
Oh,
that was years ago. Now we have about 50, 60 of them.
He said he ordered one from every single. So boy, he's going to have tomatoes.
Oh, that's funny. That's neat.
He wants to make sure he gets them because sometimes things are hard to get right now. Seeds are hard to come by, aren't they?
They are. Certain varieties of all years, seed delivery to us has been later this year than ever before. Usually by first or second week of January, we have some of everything on hand. There are still maybe 7 or 8 varieties that we've not even seen our first shipment of that seed yet. And there are transportation issues. There are, depending on where the seed's coming from, certain operations could have been closed down for a couple of months because of COVID. And there's all of these factors. But we don't seem like we're having any problem as far as being able to get the volume that we need. It's just actually getting it here is the holdup.
So if I ask you if you have Filipendula, Queen of the Prairie, you're not going to be able to tell me, right?
Not off the top of my head, no. I'm not quite on top of the 4,500 SKUs yet.
I had a reader asking that question. I know she's desperate to get some, and I don't know what to tell her.
Go to the seed catalog, the catalog pages.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised that we did, but
yeah. Okay. Well, this has been really, really informative and a great place to start our podcast career. I want to thank both of you, and I want to give thanks to the Government of Canada for giving us the funding to make this happen. And I hope you'll join us in a couple of weeks.